Tuesday was the deadliest day in Gaza in weeks. At least 30 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school housing displaced Palestinians near Khan Yunis. Most of the dead were reportedly women and children. It was the fourth Israeli attack on a school over the past 4 days in Gaza. Al Jazeera aired footage showing children playing soccer at the school at the time of the blast. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza decried the attack as a, quote, heinous massacre against displaced citizens, unquote. Eyewitnesses said the Israeli attack resulted in body parts flying through the air.
We were sitting safely in the afternoon, somewhat settled. Suddenly, a missile was fired. I'm not sure what kind of missile, F-16 or not, Apache. The schools were overcrowded with people and the street was full too. Suddenly, a missile hit and destroyed the whole place. There were bodies and body parts. Bodies flew. Body parts flew in the air. I don't know how to describe it. I can't. People sitting safely, selling goods, making a living to provide for their children. No one. I don't know what happened. Why would they hit us like that?
We go now to Gaza, where we're joined by journalist Akram al-Satari. He's joining us from outside the Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. I know that there's a time delay, but Akram, if you can describe exactly what has happened and what's being described as the deadliest 24 hours in a number of weeks.
Our world that must be driven out. Look at what they will do.
The deadliest 24 hours
in modern time,
rather than weeks. Heavy bombardment taking place in different parts of the Gaza Strip, including Gaza North, Gaza City, Gaza Central area,
this is Zionist
area, and also Rafah area. In only 27 people out of 56 people who were killed in the last 24 hours were killed in that area. One shelter that was used by hundreds of families, and one area that was used by families as a shelter outside of the school were targeted by 3 missiles that brought to that heavy loss amongst them. 27 children, women, elderly people, and youth as well were killed. More than 52 other people were killed. Al-Nusayrat area also 24 hours or so ago witnessed a large-scale incident where around 19 Palestinians were killed and around 70 others were injured. Rafah also have been witnessing large-scale bombardment that has been taking the lives of tens of Palestinians. Gaza Central area also, besides Al-Nusayrat, Al-Bureij also witnessed a targeting incident where around 9 people were killed in a heavy crowded area in the middle of Al-Bureij refugee camp, where thousands of displaced people were there and were trying to secure their very basic needs amidst that very critical situation, characterizing a great deal of lack to the essential supplies for the people who are in need. So the bombardments are technically everywhere in the Gaza Strip. The people who are bearing the brunt of those bombardments are the Palestinian displaced people and the Palestinians from Khan Yunis, Rafah, Gaza Central area, Gaza City and the north, who have been asked also to move from their areas.
The common
in Khan Yunis area, around 250,000 Palestinians were asked to head from the eastern part of the city to the western side of the city. In Gaza, around 300,000 Palestinians are already asked by the Israeli forces to leave the Gaza City and
back up by the United States,
Deir al-Balah area and Khan Yunis and Rafah. So overall tense situation that has been exacerbated by the Israeli measures followed and by the adverse development taking place, not only because of the bombardment, but rather because of the very large scale displacement that reminds the Palestinians of the very first days of the war, and even worse than that.
Can you tell us, Akram, about the reports that flyers are being dropped all over Gaza City, telling everyone to leave? What exactly this means?
and
We are
many
seeing
others.
that the Palestinian Red
France,
Crescent has said its teams are
Germany,
receiving dozens of
34
humanitarian
nations
distress
in the
calls
Criminal
from
Alliance
residents in Gaza City where the
also-
ambulances and medics are not able to
also
enter because the Red
Zelensky
Crescent
in
described the
Russia.
intensity
Let's
of
not
the
take our
bombardment
eyes
of the area.
off of
What is
Zelensky
happening in Gaza
in
City?
Russia. Poor secular, two fucking faggots.
Yes, the intensity of the bombardment in that area, Gaza area, is coupled
Killing
with
women
the
and
requests
children.
that were made by the Israeli forces asking around 400,000 Palestinians
has
who are living
supported
in Gaza, including also the
genocide.
internally displaced people, to head south. And they were describing
get
the
to see the
route to
true-
head south. And they were saying that
true
Salah
make
ad-Din Street and also
who
another
you
Al-Rashid
elected.
Street area are the safe routes for the
Now you have
Palestinians
truly,
to make it
truly
to
seen
the unannounced humanitarian
the
shelters
wicked
and routes as described
peace
by the Israeli occupation forces.
that you
But
have elected.
unfortunately, there's no safe haven in Gaza, no one safe, no place safe according to the description that was made by the Commissioner General of the UN. That means a new round of massive displacement is planned by the Israeli occupation forces, not only in Gaza City where 400,000 Palestinians are safe, but also in Khan Yunis area where is a quarter
The world
million
must stand
of
up
Palestinians
against
that were asked to move
apartheid.
to the
We must
safe
stand
and
up
western
against
parts of the city.
apartheid.
So the
All people
those
in the
actions
world
are now
today
leading to
must
more
home
despair,
in
leading to more
on this
displacement,
now.
and are likely also
There is
to
no
lead
other
to more
way.
destructions once the Israeli occupation forces start the destruction
Stand
in that
up
area,
and
which
fight.
they have started at a very
And
large
run
scale.
the
in
demons
Al-Shaja'iyya,
and the
in
fucking
Al-Sabah,
Zionists
in
them
Ad-Daraj, in
motherfucking ass.
Al-Tufah, and also in
From the
Al-Saraya area, which
shore
are main neighborhoods
into the
in
sea.
Gaza, including
So
the
it is
Gaza old
said.
city that is
So let it be
a
written.
historical
This
place that
day,
has already been targeted by the
in
Israeli
Kemet,
occupation forces and as well, and a significant proportion of
Africa.
it was destroyed.
I'm looking at a piece in The Guardian describing footage broadcast by Al Jazeera showing children playing football in the school's yard when a sudden boom shook the area, prompting shouts of a strike, a strike. If you
Oh,
could
yeah.
explain what happened
This
when
is
the
the
kids
peace.
were playing
This is the
soccer.
Zionists. This is the invaders into I ancestors' land. You call
Well,
Africa.
apparently, obviously,
They
they were
must be
targeted by
removed.
the Israeli occupation forces.
Israel
this
is
is one
finished.
of the incidents
It's a
that
fake,
was
it's a
documented
lie,
by the camera.
and it's a
Unfortunately,
murdering, blood-sucking
100 more
vampire
incidents
amongst
are
our
taking
race
place without
and
the
the
camera
globe
being
as
there
a
to
global
capture the horror
effect.
that has been caused,
They
the
must be
destruction that
removed.
has been brought to the lives and to the facilities, and the death that has taken the life. Families were divided. According to one of my friends who was there, who was an emergency doctor, they received 27 bodies of one family, and the only surviving member of the family was a 26 years old, 26 days old child. So many incidents are taking place. Many lives are wasted, and when you look at the condition and the context and the way people were living when they were targeted, you come to a conclusion that people were just not doing anything. They were not engaging in combat activities. They were not carrying arms. They're not fighting. They're just plain people who are seeking some comfort, some rest and respite to their life amidst that ever-escalating military situation, amidst that ever-exacerbating humanitarian crisis. They were trying to play together. I mean, the children, they were trying to find some time of peace when their life was targeted, and they were ending up dead. And I think also most of them not only dead, but some of them are losing their limbs and end up like physically disabled. Some of them losing their sight, which some of the people were reporting about. Some of the children who were injured were losing their eyes and losing their ability to sense things. So one of them lost their 4 limbs. A child, a baby boy who lost his 4 limbs. So you can imagine, and I don't think you can ever be able to imagine the level of distress that has been caused. People who have been communicating with the Palestinian Red Crescent Society are people who were trapped under the rubble of their homes. The story of Al-Hilo family that was targeted in Gaza City, and around 19 family people were killed, and the only survivor, who was 19 years old, was communicating with the Palestinian Red Crescent and was telling them that he cannot help his family and that his mother was killed and that she is on his lap and that his father is screaming from under the rubble and seeking help, and his brothers and sisters were also seeking help by screaming, and no one could help them because the Palestinian Red Crescent Society cannot go to those areas where some fighting is taking place, otherwise they would be targeted. And we have seen different incidents where the Palestinian Red Crescent Society teams were targeted, and even international organizations like the World Central Kitchen and also some other organizations, the UNRWA, were targeted, and they ended up losing some of their staff.
Yes, UNRWA, their headquarters were hit. UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini wrote today, 4 schools hit in the last 4 days. Since the war began, 2/3 of UNRWA schools in Gaza have been hit. Some were bombed out, many severely damaged. Schools have gone from safe places of education and hope for children to overcrowded shelters and often ending up a place of death and misery. 9 months in, under our watch, the relentless, endless killings, destruction, and despair continue. Gaza is no place for children. The blatant disregard of international humanitarian law cannot become the new normal. Ceasefire now before we lose what is left of our common humanity. Again, those are the words of the UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini, the Palestinian Relief and Works Agency. Your comment on the ground, Akram, and if you can also respond to whether people on the ground are hearing about the negotiations that are taking place, well, it was in Cairo, now in Doha, around a ceasefire.
Landslide majority of the Palestinians are disconnected from the external world. They don't have internet, they don't have electrical supply, they don't have access to any communication whatsoever. So unfortunately, most of them in the past were extremely interested. They were trying to go to the places where they have electrical supplies because due to having the PV panels, or where they have been following the news. But now people are extremely busy surviving. They have been linking any talk about the negotiation and any analysis about any breakthrough when it comes to negotiation and swap deal with the major developments taking place on the ground. Like whenever they talk about negotiation, they understand that the Israeli government is going to start a large-scale military step where they would be targeting Gaza. And the very same thing practically is happening. They were talking about the negotiation in Doha and Cairo in the media, and then the day after, the Israeli occupation forces started that large-scale ground operation in Gaza, and now they're asking 400,000 Gazans to leave Gaza City and move to the south of Gaza, and they're asking 250,000 to move from the first half of Khan Yunis to the other half of Khan Yunis. So people are pessimistic about the intention of the Israeli government to do anything whatsoever that can eventually lead to a ceasefire or to rest or respite or peace or comfort or safety or whatever things that have to do with the rest of humanitarian soul that has been haunted by the ongoing bombardment and loss and fear of imminent death. So Palestinians are struggling. Unfortunately, most of them don't have access to the internet, so they cannot continue following the news about the developments, but they have been seeing the developments with their own eyes. I believe the ones who were killed in Khan Yunis, the 27 family members, and also the 52 others who were injured in a shelter that was supposed to be protected according to the international law and UNRWA facility, they fully understand now that it is just a talk till something tangible happens, till some sense of safety happens to them, until they can retrieve some normalcy to their life. The statements that are made by Commissioner General of the UNRWA are appreciated by the Palestinians. They have been seeing the UNRWA struggling for the sake of providing them with a life-saving medication, food, water, and non-food items. However, they understand that Israeli occupation is not listening to any call except the call of war and fighting, and they understand on the ground that they have been the prime target of that unleashed power and fire that is targeting them. As you can hear in the background, more injured people presumably are coming to the hospital, and the bombardment is still ongoing. People are still killed, and they understand that nothing serious has been done to stop that, neither by the international community nor by the different UN agencies that are mandated to condemn the atrocities and to stop them as well and hold accountable the perpetrator of those.
I want to thank you so much for being with us, Akram Al-Satari, journalist based right now, speaking to us outside the Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Please be safe yourself. The latest news out of Gaza when it comes to journalists, well, the Gaza Government Media Office says over 150 Palestinian journalists have been killed. Most recently, Palestinian journalist Saadi Madouk and Ahmed Sukar killed Friday following an Israeli raid that targeted a home of the Madouk family in the Daraz neighborhood of Gaza City. The New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists says well over 100 media workers have died since October 7th. They are saying, the Committee to Protect Journalists, that the killing of journalists in Gaza makes it the deadliest period since CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists, began gathering data in 1992. This is Democracy Now! Coming up, Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, Palestinian physician, activist, politician. He's usually in Ramallah, but is in Washington, D.C. right now. Stay with us. Has accused Israel of engaging in a campaign of starvation and genocide in Gaza. Michael Fakhri, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, and the other experts,
Biden administration
we declare that Israel's intentional and targeted starvation campaign against the Palestinian people is a form of genocidal violence and has resulted in famine across all of Gaza. We call upon the international community to prioritize the delivery of humanitarian aid by land by any means necessary, end Israel's siege, and establish a ceasefire, the United Nations experts wrote. The effects of the famine are being felt across Gaza. This is Ghanima Joma, a Palestinian mother speaking from Nasser Hospital in Gaza's Khan Yunis, next to her son, Yunus Joma.
My son suffers from malnutrition due to the war and because of the tinned food he's eating. Before the war, he used to eat all kinds of food, meats, eggs, all kinds. Now things have gone up in price, or there is shortage due to the closing of the crossings. A week ago, I was with him here in the hospital, and every day his health is deteriorating. My wish is that my child recovers and gets back to how he was before the war, and that he finds his rights like any other child. I hope his health improves to how it was before the war. I wish that I don't lose my child. Looking at him, lying in front of me, I feel that he is dying in front of my eyes, and I can't do anything for him.
We're joined right now by Dr. Mustafa Barghouti. He is a Palestinian physician, an activist, a politician who serves as General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative. He usually joins us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, but today is joining us from Washington, D.C. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Dr. Barghouti. If you can start off by responding to that woman who is sitting next to her dying, starving son.
Well, there are no words to describe the feelings of this woman or our feelings when we watch that. But what we see today is a purposeful act of starvation, one form of war crime where Israel is using starvation as an instrument of war. And that's why UNICEF has been warning the last few days that 50,000 children now are at risk of death and at risk of famine because of the starvation policy of the Israeli government. And that is, of course, horrifying. But if you allow me, I want to alert you to something even more important. I think at this today, we are witnessing probably the most dangerous day in this whole war on Gaza, in this whole aggression on Gaza. The Israeli army is trying to evict hundreds of thousands of people from Gaza City and from northern parts of Gaza in an effort to completely ethnically cleanse Gaza City. And they are threatening people that they would bombard them in every possible way if they don't move. And the people of Gaza are resilient. They refuse to leave. They say we are ready even to face death, but not leave one more time by this terrible Israeli forces who are trying to ethnically cleanse us. We cannot take this this insult one more time, and I think that's why it's very dangerous. And I want to explain that what Netanyahu is doing now, what his fascist government is doing now in Gaza, is really trying to achieve through this terrible bombardment that you've just described, which took the lives of more than 40 people, and through this act of trying to ethnically cleanse all the population of Gaza City, I think he's aiming at three goals. The first one is to undermine completely any negotiations that are taking place to achieve ceasefire and any negotiations to stop this aggression that is taking place on the people of Gaza. Second, I think this reveals that the real intention of Netanyahu and Gallant and all the Israeli government has never changed. Their main goal is the total ethnic cleansing of all of Gaza people and all of the Gaza Strip. And finally, I think this shows that Netanyahu's real intention is to maintain the Israeli occupation of Gaza. He wants to completely ethnically cleanse the whole of the north of Gaza and Gaza City as well, and then concentrate the Israeli occupation in that area and then move forward. And that, of course, fits very well with the news that we've just received that the Israeli army is already starting building permanent bases of the military in the northern part and in Gaza City. This is a very dangerous element. This is a very dangerous moment, and it will carry in itself two major risks: a total ethnic cleansing of Gaza City, but in addition to that, terrible massacre that could happen because people are refusing to leave and the Israelis would start bombarding. And this would not have happened if it wasn't for this terrible silence from the whole world, if it wasn't from the cover that was provided to the Israeli, including by, unfortunately, the American administration. If no moves are made immediately by the whole world community, by the International Criminal Court, which should issue the indictment of both Netanyahu and Gallant, if the International Court of Justice does not immediately issue an order of stopping this terrible genocide and this terrible war on Gaza, and if the world community does not engage immediately on pressuring Israel and even threatening sanctions of Israel, this Netanyahu government will lead the situation into the most terrible massacre since the beginning of this terrible aggression on Gaza, which has already taken the lives of no less than 48,000 people, if we count the people under the rubble, and maybe even more than that. There are 87,000 people who are injured, many of whom will not continue to live because there is no medical facility to treat them, since Israel destroyed most of the medical facilities. I've just been talking to our teams in Gaza, the Palestinian medical relief teams, and they tell me that in Gaza City now, there is no service whatsoever except medical relief there, because the Baptist hospital has been forced to be evacuated. Injured people there are there without doctors, without proper care. Our guys are trying to help them in every possible way, but the whole of Gaza City is now without medical services except the mobile teams of medical relief. That is very dangerous situation, and it could exacerbate in every possible way. And that's why what I'm talking about is an urgent situation, and this is an urgent call to the whole world, to the United Nations, to international organizations, to humanitarian organizations, to the people who want to save lives of Palestinians, that they should move immediately, because what we could see now is a terrible development, not only of ethnic cleansing, but horrible massacres that could take place against the Palestinian population of Gaza.
Their true colors, aren't they?
Mustafa Barghouti, we usually speak to you in Ramallah. Why are you in Washington, D.C. right now? And what is your demand of the Biden administration? As you can see, if you're watching any of the media in the United States, there's very little literal television coverage of what's happening in Gaza. It's all about Biden's mental health and his physical diminishment.
They're moving on Zionist
If you
accord.
can talk about, there's a NATO summit, of course,
Allowing
happening right now
atrocities and enclaiming
with
to be
world
somebody.
leaders gathered in Washington, D.C. What your demands are on not only Biden, but the others as well.
Well, as you know, Amy, for 7.5 years, I was never granted a visa to come here. So I don't know, by a strike of luck or because there was so much pressure from the Palestinian community here, which invited me to come and speak to them. And that was the main purpose of my visit here, to speak to Palestinian activists, to Palestinian community in the United States. I got a one-entry visa and I decided to use it. And I am also trying to meet as many legislators as possible, as many people in the media and in other to alert them to what's happening in Gaza and to mobilize every possible resources to help the steadfastness of the people of Gaza, but also to stop this
Remind me
terrible
of
aggression.
Germany.
My message to those who are
Just
meeting in
before the
Washington is
war.
very clear. You're playing with fire. What's happening in Gaza is showing the whole world that there is no international law anymore. That there is no respect whatsoever anymore for the so-called human rights. All your talks about human rights and democracy and all your talks about international order are out of the window. They mean nothing now when the
Because
whole
they are
world sees
being
that Israel is
controlled by the
enjoying the utmost
This is what
amount
you
of
must
impunity,
understand.
the
A
utmost
wicked
amount
group
of support while
of
it is committing this terrible
organizations
massacre. $20 billion
that
of
don't give a
military
shit
aid
about
from
human
your
rights.
administration, the American administration,
And they
from
are
your
in control of
taxpayers,
everything.
to those who are committing now three
this
war
way.
crimes in parallel: genocide, ethnic cleansing, and collective punishment,
going on a
including
long,
starvation of children and women and civilians. This is unacceptable. And what's happening in Gaza will have a terrible impact on the whole world,
Get out of the
because it
wall,
sends one
baby.
message that there is no
Wake
international
up,
law anymore,
spy boy.
that there is no human rights
drive the
anymore,
black truck.
that anybody who has power can do whatever they want, whenever they want,
That's right.
and as they want. That is the message that is getting out, and that is going to be a terribly undermining situation for the security and safety and peace all over the world.
That's right.
I think the main responsible here is the American administration, and especially Biden administration, who could have done much, much, much more
That's right.
to stop this war
But
and
he's
to stop
down
this
with it.
atrocity.
He
and
is
this,
down with
and,
it.
and now that
He
the ethnic
created
cleansing
a
of no
homeland
less than 400,000
for
clean
an
people
invasion.
is just about to happen, leading
In
to maybe the
Africa,
total
in
ethnic
Kenya.
cleansing of Gaza. This
And
is
then
the moment
rewrite
when people have to intervene.
a Bible
There is an element of urgency
to
here,
justify that shit.
and people have to move. And I'm telling you, the message I got from the people of Gaza today, I just been talking to
And
them.
there's still no
They say
justification,
we're not going
even
to
in the
leave
book.
anymore. We're not going to
Because
listen to Israeli
said you
instructions.
came
Whatever
in
it takes. We will
to
die
Egypt,
and not leave our homes, and
which we know
we
is
will
European.
die and not leave our homes. We're not going to be subjected to this Israeli imposition of ethnic cleansing. That's why I'm saying there is a very important element of urgency here, and people have to move very quickly and very soon to stop this terrible atrocity that Netanyahu and his fascist government, with people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, are just about to commit.
So